Hello and welcome to the first prompt of Cocoon in the very first week. And our theme for the week is safety and belonging. And so I wanted to start off with this mindfulness practice, which is called the 54321, which is an extremely grounding practice. And the reason I wanted to start off with this practice is as we move through the weeks of Cocoon and the 41 prompts to come, even though I have planned Cocoon in such a way that we are doing inner work, but in a light, creative, playful, joyful manner. So I haven't gone into anything which is very dark or deep or triggering or that involves very dark shadow work. Nevertheless, I am not with you in person and I do not know your entire history. And so I do not know where something even small can be triggering for you. So I wanted to start off this cocoon with a tool that you can use anytime you find something that comes up in cocoon triggers memories or brings up emotions which you find overwhelming or hard to cope with. But I also want to say that I came across the 54321 in my early days of motherhood when I had like a small babe in arms and I was nursing 24/7. So I was on the phone a lot of the times and I was in a zillion parenting groups on Facebook. And I found that people kept referencing this practice. Parents in those groups, mothers especially, kept referencing the 54321. And then some said it helped them with intrusive thoughts. Some said it helped them with anxiety. That they said that when they were angry, they did the 54321. And so I started using it in my life as a mother. I have never experienced intrusive thoughts before motherhood, but motherhood came with a lot of intrusive thoughts for me. And even though I knew with my medical background that there was such a phenomenon as intrusive thoughts, and we are not to believe those thoughts or worry that we will, act out on them or that they're actually going to come true. Well, the body doesn't really know, right? When you have this image of something terrible happening to your child, your body perceives it as real and it responds with that racing heart and that anxiety and the palpitations. And I found that the 54321 tool was much more effective than telling my brain, this is not true, this is not going to happen, because my child could get hurt, right? My child could have an accident. So telling my brain that this is not going to happen was not helpful. And then my brain would argue with me, this could happen. And then it would try to come up with ways to prevent it from happening. So to prevent my child from ever getting hurt, to prevent my child from ever having an accident. And so I would go into these overthinking thought loops, ruminations, which again, it made me more and more anxious because I know, we all know, right, that we can't control the world that we live in. And as human beings, mistakes will happen and life will unfold the way it is supposed to be unfolded, the way it's supposed to, even if we are the most careful that we can ever possibly be. So I started following on this practice, the 54321, which was much, much more effective because it's not verbal, right? It is to do with our senses. It is to use our body and the gift that our body has, our five senses, to bring us back into this moment, into this place, into this time, away from wherever anxiety is taking us, into the past or into the future, cutting through those thought spirals, replacing those flashes of imagery of intrusive thoughts. So I used it when I was anxious, when I was spiraling with overthinking, when I was ruminating too much, when I was having intrusive thoughts. I've used it in the dark while putting my child to sleep while we are in bed and I'm completely safe, but I'm having these intrusive thoughts. I've used it to cope with imagery flashbacks from traumatic events that have happened in my past. I've used it for emotional flashbacks, if you've ever had one of those. It's a very, very powerful tool. And so let me tell you what it is in brief. It is 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. And now, when you say it like this, it sounds like nothing at all, right? And so, as I kept practicing it, I found, and as I kept coming across it in different contexts and reading about it, because I found it was such a powerful practice, naturally, I was very interested. And then, so through trial and error and through reading and research, I found ways to make this practice even more powerful and even more potent than when I had initially heard about it. And so, that is what I'm going to share with you right now, because those small little nuances really do make all of the difference. Like a regular 54321 can work when you're, just a little scattered, right? But sometimes you have in a very big moment of, say, panic or anxiety. And that's when you need those nuances to kind of really ground you. So the first thing I have to say is to do the practice as slowly as you possibly can. And it is very hard to slow down when we are anxious. So please do not put a lot of pressure on yourself. What I mean to say is that don't race to do it, right? I'm looking at you and I'm in my office space. and I can name 5 things that I'm looking at right away, right? That would not necessarily bring me back to the present moment. What I find helpful to slow me down, as well as for reasons that I will share with you, is to, when I look for 5 things, it is to move my head on my neck. So, looking to the right, looking to the left, looking up, looking down. Now, this is an orienting movement, okay? You will see birds and animals do it all the time. When our head moves on our neck, it orients our body in the time and space that we are in. And so doing that movement in itself, it brings us back into the present moment. And at this point, I just want to say, you may be in a presently unsafe situation, right? There might be something which is happening in your life. So when I say the present moment is a safe place to land, I don't mean the whole situation you are in. I just mean this one moment in time, like these few minutes that you are giving to this practice, right? In just this few moments, you can be present and nothing. I mean, unless you're in an active disaster situation, most of the times we can find that pocket of a few minutes which might be safe, right? So this is for those kind of moments. So when we move ahead side to side on our neck, we're orienting ourselves just like birds and animals. We're not in tunnel vision. What happens is when we are anxious or when we are very angry, we are in a sympathetic overdrive. That's why we can often feel our hearts beating fast. We may be breathing faster than normal. We may have this jittery feeling of wanting to run away. When we feel anxious, we feel very restless. You would describe it to someone this way, like with the flapping of your hands. If you're very anxious or angry with that sympathetic overdrive, the other thing that happens is that your brain is looking for the immediate danger. So it is extremely focused and your pupils like constrict so that you can only focus on the danger. So when we deliberately move our head from side to side, we're not only orienting ourselves in this moment, this space that we are in, we're also telling our eyes, signaling to our eyes, we're taking in more information, right? So that tunnel vision that comes with anxiety or anger, we're kind of counteracting it. So I could look right in front of me and say, well, I see my earphones, I see papers, I see my charger, I see my mobile phone, and I see books. And that may very well be enough in some situations. But in situations where it isn't sufficient, take the time to look around the space, even if you're in a dark room. Remember, I've done this with my child sleeping on my arm in a completely pitch dark room because that's what my child needs to sleep. And I've had an intrusive thought. And I've still tried to turn my head right and left and say, well, okay, I can't see much, but I can just make out the curtains which are, flapping in the fan breeze. And I can just about make out the bed that we are lying on and the pillow. And I can make out the shape or form of my husband lying in the distance and the shape and form of my sofa. So I'm orienting myself to my room even in my darkness. And so when I do that, well, then I can see my child's toys on my right hand side. I can see my curtain, and beyond that, my balcony on my left hand side. Above me, I can see the roof and the fan. Below me, I can see the floor. I can see my water bottle. In front of me, I can see my mobile phone. So I have widened my perspective and I have really come into this time and space. And the reason why I spend time on this is because I have found this to be very, very effective. There were times when I rushed through the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and I didn't find that anxiety relief. And it wasn't that the practice was wrong, it's just that I needed to go slower. And because I can't just tell myself, well, go slower, Nimisha, it doesn't work that way, right? When our brain is hijacked by that sympathetic nervous system, it's a survival mechanism. We are in fight or flight, even if we aren't in a situation which our conscious mind thinks needs surviving. The reason that we are in fight or flight is because we sense, or our body senses more accurately, some danger around us. And so just telling ourselves, well, I am safe, it doesn't always work. But orienting ourselves in time and space is a way of showing our body that we are safe. Widening our field of vision is allowing more visual input to come into our eyes, and it allows our body to feel safe. So that's why I spend so much time on this. Now, the second thing is 4 things that you can touch. And invariably, there will be 4 things you can touch, the scrunchie you're wearing, even the texture of your hair, the texture of different parts of your body. Your chin is more firm than your nose. Your lips are soft, right? Your hair may be rough, or it may be curly, or it may be wavy, or it may be silky smooth. The clothing that you are wearing, the buttons on your clothes. So you will always be able to find at least 4 things that you can touch, okay? And I particularly like to spend time on the sense of touch because I'm a very, very tactile person. There are times when I cannot do the whole 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. There are times when say I'm in a public space or where, well, there are people around and I'm feeling anxious and I can't necessarily, do the whole orientation thing. I would have to explain that I'm feeling anxious and that would defeat the purpose because then people rush in to console you or to say it's not so bad really, and that just feels dismissive and gaslighty, even though their intentions are good. So in those moments, I find the texture is really, really good. And when I say touch, I don't mean just touch it. Okay, you can touch it and say, okay, this is a table, this is a piece of paper, this is my dress, this is part of my body, this is the chair I'm sitting on. But if you take a few moments, we have a lot of nerve endings on our fingertips. Our fingertips are extremely sensitive. And so if you take a little time to kind of feel into the texture, right? So right now I can feel into the hem that has been stitched at the bottom of my shirt. And that is a very different texture from the feel of this button, which is more round and plasticky and a bit textured where like the stitch comes up, which is very, very different from these papers I have in front of me, which is very different from my table, which is extremely hard, right? So spend a little time with the sense of touch and you might find, I find that touch itself, when I can't do the whole 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, touch itself is sufficient to bring me back into the present moment. And what I want to say here is also, different situations will call for modifications of this process. So for example, when I'm anxious, I can feel into the texture of things. I can feel the weight of something, like a paperweight or this is my earphone box or a mug of or cup of water or tea. I can feel the warmth from the cup. And that's really great. When I am anxious, this helps me. When I'm angry, this doesn't work so well. And I'll tell you why. It's a bit personal, but I grew up in a house where domestic violence was the norm, and I didn't know when an object would come flying past us at any given point of time. And so the combination of anger and having something heavy in my hand, it feels personally very unsafe to me. Now, this might not be the case for you. You might find that texture and touch are great for you when you are angry, that they allow you to kind of come back into the moment, feel your anger, but not really respond or rage out of your anger, right? But that's not how it works for me because I end up feeling much more unsafe. I have never in my life personally ever thrown anything at anyone, not even as a child and not even as an adult. Like throwing was just not my thing. But because of that association, childhood association with anger and objects being thrown, I'm not able to relax enough to feel into the sensations of things when I'm angry. When I'm anxious, yes, but not when I'm angry. So when I'm angry, I find that feeling the floor beneath my feet, and I'm a person who loves to go barefoot. So the floor beneath my feet is usually either the cool tile or it is a wooden flooring or it is a carpet or rug that I may have. And so feeling texture even with the pads of my toes can be extremely helpful. But if not, then just feeling my feet on the ground and feeling gravity pulling against my feet, like tuning into that sensation can help me when I'm really angry. So I share this example so that you can understand that, certain things may not work in certain situations. And so this is something I will talk about after I finish describing the practice a little more in detail. But please do try out variations of these the five senses in different situations and see what works for you. What's your unique formula? What's your unique recipe, right? I'm just offering the practice itself and my examples, but different things may work for you. So, three things that you can hear is again really great because we all know how certain sounds are soothing, right? Universally, they're considered to be soothing, like the sound of waves on the sea. Now, they say that that sound mimics the kind of sound that a fetus hears, and all of us, we were grown inside a woman's belly, right? So the whooshing of blood through our mother's body, it's very the muffled sounds that the fetus hears because it is suspended in that amniotic fluid is very similar to waves crashing on the shore. So that's supposed to be very soothing. But let me offer you an example. If someone has had a bad experience with the sea, right, like a near drowning or a boat capsizing or something traumatic, then the sea may not necessarily be associated with soothing sounds for them. So that is why I really like the 3 or 5 4 3 2 1 because it's about tuning into sounds in your environment right now, not necessarily peaceful sounds, okay, or so-called peaceful sounds. So what am I hearing right now? What are any near sounds that I may be hearing? Can I hear the fan whirring? Can I hear birds chirping? Can I hear, the crank of the lift in the background of my building? Can I hear distant sounds of my family talking and doing whatever they're doing in another part of the house? Can I hear distant sounds of the traffic? So, once again, the purpose of hearing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is to allow you to come back to this present moment, right? So I find it helpful to think of it as near sounds and far sounds. And so near sound could even be your belly rumbling, right? If you're asleep, it could be your husband snoring. I hate it when he snores because it doesn't let me sleep. And yet, when I have had an intrusive thought in the night, the fact that I can hear him snoring or breathing, or I can hear my child snuffling or sniffing or talking in her sleep is very grounding. It reminds me that I am not wherever my anxious thoughts took me. I am here right now in bed with my family in a house that is safe. I'm safe, right? So it kind of lets my body feel that. But of course, we can exploit this by keeping close access to sounds that we find soothing. So some examples might be, like I said, the sea crashing. A lot of people find rain very soothing. If you're not a person who likes rain, then you may not find the sound of rain soothing. I like the sound of thunderstorms. It's not for everyone, right? Some people like the sounds of trains. That's not for me. Universally, people tend to like birds chirping, crickets chirping, because if the forest was silent when we were all hunter gatherers, like going back to our ancestors, if there was complete silence in the forest, it meant that there is a predator around. But if birds are chirping, crickets are chirping, that means that usually there isn't a predator around and your nervous system can relax, right? So that's why we find those sounds helpful. So one way is that you can keep sounds that you find helpful. And there are a lot of recordings of ambient sounds on Spotify, on YouTube. You can kind of have like a playlist of these sounds that you can turn to. But you don't really need that. That's how you can use the sense to come back into the present moment. You always have some sounds that are happening around you. Like I'm literally sitting in a quiet room to record this right now, and I can still hear the hum of the the lift in our building because it's just beyond this wall. And I can hear, some kids playing in the background. Like I'm sure it won't get picked up by the microphone, but I can hear sounds from other people's kitchen. And so that allows me to come back into this present moment. Okay. Now, the next two are a little harder. I'm going to be straight up front. Two things that you can smell and one thing you can taste is often very, very hard, especially if you're in a moment of panic. So it's perfectly acceptable to see if you can smell two things. Okay. And what I usually do is I will smell my hair. And if I've recently washed my hair, then I would get a whiff of the shampoo or conditioner creams that I have used, and I will smell my hand. And usually, if I've washed my hands, I would be able to smell it. If I'm bed with my child, I will sniff my child. I don't think it's unusual for mothers to constantly be sniffing at their children's heads. So that's something that I will do. But there's often not smell. What you can do is just make a good enough attempt at two smells. And if you can't find it, you can just say, okay, I'm not able to smell anything specific right now. But if you're in a place like your home, or say, even you're in a public place, usually a toilet is a place, or a washroom is a place where you will find smells. And now I don't want to be unsavory, so I'm not talking about the unpleasant smells, but usually if there is a soap dispenser, right? Or if there is a freshener in the washroom, you could inhale the fragrance of that, right? But two really great places are the kitchen and the bathroom, because you have a lot of fragrant products in the bathroom, and in the kitchen you have a lot of spices. So, and to take it further, you could also always have essential oils or perfumes that can help you come back to the present moment. And here again, I want to say our sense of smell has this ability to take us back to our past very, very easily, right? This is our nose, and when we inhale, the molecules of any fragrance go and they hit the upper part of the nose, which is it's a perforated plate called the cribriform plate. Just above the cribriform plate sits a part of the brain called the hippocampus, and this is where we process our memories. So it's almost like a direct pathway. That's why a fragrance can evoke a memory that you haven't remembered for a really long time. Say you smell a perfume and it suddenly takes you back to grade 5 where your favorite teacher used that perfume. Like you'd completely forgotten about it. But when you smell it, you're right back there in that classroom, right? So the two things to keep in mind is, if you are going to keep scents around you to ground you, you can try out with experimenting things like, oh, lavender is supposed to be calming and rose is supposed to be, well, I don't know what rose scent is supposed to be. For me, it's a very grounding sense because I associate roses with my devotion for Mother Mary. So that's the connection for me. And for me, lavender is also very grounding because it was like the first adult perfume I owned as a teen when I was going through a lot of body changes. That lavender perfume, it kind of made me feel okay about my changing body and about the fact that I was no longer a child and transitioning to a teen. So I used to spray it liberally when I used to go for exams, and it was really calming for me. But it might not be calming for you if that same perfume, which was actually Yardley's English Lavender, if your teacher whom you hated used it. Okay. So it might have a negative connection with you. So we can experiment with these. This scent is supposed to be relaxing, and this is supposed to be energizing, and this is supposed to be this, and this is supposed to be that. So always experiment, but remember that this is really about creating a unique system that can bring you back into the present moment. And so that brings me to taste. But I had a teacher, a writing teacher, who spoke about how she used to get nightmares after a very significant trauma that she had. And she would wake up in the middle of the night and go to her kitchen and open a bottle of tahini that she kept specifically for this purpose and eat a spoonful of it because it used to make her feel grounding. So a lot of people find tahini or hummus very grounding because of the taste or the texture. I haven't particularly found my sense of taste to help me. And I'm also worried because I know that a lot of us who are very sensitive people, we sometimes, make ourselves feel better by eating. And so I don't want this practice to turn into a place where you kind of end up relying on food to make you feel better, because taste is about that one spoon of tahini, one pinch of wasabi, salt on your tongue tip, or one spoon of hummus. But especially if you have had any issues with eating, you can either just think of it as taste as 1 teaspoon of whatever it is that grounds you, or you can even ignore taste altogether. Or, like my teacher, you can rely on that 1 spoon of tahini. So, I'm giving you all of this to kind of play with and make your own. So, which brings me to the part about how to use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 from today. I would like you to encourage you to use 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 in as many different situations as you can in your life, as many times of a day as you can. So anytime you find yourself spiraling, anytime you find yourself overthinking, anytime you find yourself feeling anxious or jittery or scattered or unfocused, right? Of course, use it when you have a panic attack. Of course, use it when you're very anxious, or if you have intrusive thoughts, or if you have flashbacks of the past, or if you have any emotional flashbacks. I've used them in all of these situations. I'm speaking from experience. I'm not just, sitting here pontificating. But use it in as many different situations as you can. Do it slow, do it quick. Uh, do it sometimes when you're just bored, and see what variations work for you in what situation, and see which sense becomes a sense that you can rely on, like a standalone sense. Like for me, it's that sense of texture and touch, except when I'm angry, when it is gravity and my feet and the ground beneath my feet. So when, as we start doing this, we start building a sense of safety in ourselves. The more we're able to bring ourselves back from anxiety, from anger, from panic to the present and feel okay, not great, not wonderful, not sunshines and roses, but just like, this is okay, I got a grip on it, I can handle this. The more we keep doing that, we're building self trust, we're building self confidence in our ability to handle whatever it is that life throws at us. And I think that is a valuable way to walk through this world, because it makes us a little less afraid of what is coming if we know that we have a tool that can help us to handle what's coming our way. And so I just want to leave you with that. I will leave this basic 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as a written prompt, so you can look at it in case you've never heard of it before and you need to remember what the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is. And also what situations to use it in. Use it as many times as you can. Do it slow, do it fast, do it in different situations, do it just one sense at a time, and keep developing that kind of vocabulary or encyclopedia or map, whichever metaphor works for you, or what works for you in different situations, which sense and which input of that sense works for you, right? So there are two ways to use it. One is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 to come into the present, and then it's the, well, okay, which sense am I more relying on? And then it can also be things like, well, what smells and what sounds do I want to keep close at hand to help ground me? So these are the different variations, and I hope you have fun with this practice. I don't use the word fun lightly. When I say fun, I mean the joy that comes from discovering things about yourself. So it's not fun in kind of a frivolous, gay way, which is also a very worthy way of having fun. But this fun is more a process of self-discovery. So I'll leave you with that. And that's it for day one. It's only going to take you a few minutes here and there. So if anything comes up, I would love to hear about it in our group. And all the very best. I will see you for prompt 2 tomorrow.